This sport is so cold, right? Let me talk to you about what is going on with Kevin Lee right now because it's extremely relevant. Let's just take another sport, throw a dart at the board. What do you come up with? All right, basketball. Great, let's use basketball. You have a player who gets hurt. You have a player who has missed a meaningful amount of time. They're now suited up. They're cleared by the doctors. They're back on the courts. There is no basketball team anywhere with any starter in the history of the league that goes in and plays the entire game. That has simply never happened. Never. Literal statement. Never. A starter gets hurt. A starter goes out. A starter comes back. They're suited up. Their first game in, they do not play whistle to whistle. It has never happened. So you take a guy like Kevin Lee, who was on the injury list, who's coming back, who has no frame of reference for what his conditioning is like, what his timing is like, not to mention he's changed weight classes. That's a difficult thing to do. You change weights, regardless of outcome, your performance is going to be different. Do you perform well enough to get your hand raised? Do you not? Two-man sport, however that plays out, it plays out. I just share for you, there is no sport over the history of time where a guy has been removed for a period of time and he goes in for the entire game. Kevin Lee did. By the way, at a different weight class, he's expected to win. He's expected to beat the other guy. He's expected to adjust to the weight. He's expected to deal with the injury. He's expected to have the timing and the conditioning and all the things that go into it all in one night. Any other player from any other sport would be able to go in for a few minutes and then come out. Even if they were playing great, if everything was cool in the gang, the coach would still pull them out. They'd let a backup go in. Coach would come over and talk to him, assess, how you doing? How's the knee doing? Maybe put him in for a few more minutes, pull him back out. Players on the side going, Coach, please put me back in. They could really use me. Coach says, you know what? I don't want to push this. You did a good job. You got a sweat. You got out there. I like what I'm seeing. We're done for tonight. We just are. Regardless of how you feel, you're done. Well, in this sport, it doesn't work that way. You don't get to tag in the backup. You don't get a coach to pull you out. You don't get to go to the locker room and put ice on it and then come back in for the third quarter, right? I mean, it's just not the way this game is played. But at the same time, how much do you want to expect out of an athlete? Where's the good job, Kevin, is what I'm wondering. Where's the pat on the back? Hey, by the way, how you feeling? How's that knee doing? It looked like you held up pretty well. Did you come back too soon? Do we need to do anything? This is where I would like to think we as an audience would behave. Not to mention, hey, Kevin, how do you feel at the weight class? How were those 15 pounds? I imagine you got fatigued a little bit differently, didn't you? But I saw that you pushed through it anyway. We can be as big a jerks as we want. We can be as cold as we want to be. This sport, I mean, right, welcome to life. It's not always very nice, but there is some kind of an extent where out of decency as a human being, you do follow the golden rule of put yourself in somebody else's shoes. How would you have gone for X amount of time? All right, great. What if I couple on the fact that you weren't even training the way that you wanted to because you were injured? That's very different. You step away from the sport for a million different reasons. Luke Rockhold is doing it right now, just to give you an example that you would know. Luke has removed himself from the sport for a period of time, but he wasn't hurt. So he could have gone into the gym regularly. He could have got that second workout in. He could have stayed sharp. If you have a guy who's injured, he can't do those things, and therefore you can't expect that he did do them. You can't expect him to look great. Then he changes weight classes, which is to take a big risk. This is a former title challenger. I'm back to Kevin Lee, but you're talking about a guy that is a former world title challenger. He's done multiple main events, and now he's going to fight a guy who nobody knows who he is. That doesn't mean that the guy isn't a great fighter. It just means he's taking a little bit of a risk. Kevin Lee's taking a little bit of a risk. He's putting a lot on the line in a different weight class after an injury against a guy who is not a household name in a sport where perception is reality. The perception that if you have a name that people within the sport don't know, you're not very good. That's a big risk. And he went out and he did it like a man at the weight class he agreed to, on the night he agreed to. He stood strong. He hung in there. It looked, by my eyes, like he was fatigued, which I would expect him to be. It looked like he was fatigued and had to dig deep. But again, why would he not get credit for that? That's what fighting is. Fighting is a term that has been so corrupted over my lifetime. Now it's about the punches and the kicks and the setups and the power. It's supposed to be about who moves forward when it's hard, who gets up when they'd rather not, who answers the bell when it's easier to stay on the stool. Kevin did all of those things. And at the end of the night, in addition to everything, he ends up not getting his hand raised. So what? There was only 2 guys out there. Your odds are not very good in this game. They're just not very good. But where's the decency? Where's the grace of human beings to look at it, understand what he went through, understand it was darn near insurmountable? I don't know if there's anybody on the roster, and we got some damn good fighters. I don't know if there's anybody in the roster that you could give an injury to, remove from the sport, change a weight class. I mean, look, this is what Jon Jones is going through right now, minus the injury. And this is not my typical take a shot at Jon Jones session. In all fairness, Jon is being very disciplined. He knows he's changing weight classes. Don't think you have to correct me and tell me 205 to 265 and it's a bigger jump. I get it. He still went up 1 weight class. That's what Kevin Lee did. But Jon didn't have to deal with the injury. It was just the opposite. He was in the gym training, trying to put on the bulk. It's very different, the scenario. And Kevin has a job. If he wants to go out and get paid and he wants to earn a living, he's got to make a date. You got to, at some point, you got to write a date down and boom, here's the finish line. Many people would not do that. Many people would buy more time. Many people would come up with excuses. He did none of those things, not to mention took a risk as a former main event title challenger, taking on somebody you're not familiar with in a different weight class. And there's always positives. Sometimes you got to find them. But the mere fact that he got 15 good minutes in any other sport, football, baseball, basketball, the coach would pull you out. No matter how well you were performing, the coach would pull you out. For sure, 100%, you won't find an example where what I just said is not absolutely, literally true. He doesn't get to come out. He gets to come out when the job is done. And we're going to talk about what should we do with him now. We're going to talk about you got beat by a guy we're not familiar with. How about we take some of those obstacles out of the way? How about we find a date 3 or 4 months from now, boom, we circle it on the calendar, get to come back in, same weight class, do everything again, anybody you want to pick, but let him have a couple of reps, which is what he got over the weekend. That's what it's about. Your comeback fight, that's what it's about. This wasn't a cash grab. This wasn't he was on the top of the bill and he could fill up an arena. He was one of the guys on the card looking to go out there, get experience, get some reps, and that's what he did. In my opinion, he did a damn good job.